Did you know in the 1960s, dolphins and other marine animals were used by the U.S. Navy as weapons in war and for different missions in war? And they were utilized because they had amazing sonar. It was able to detect all kinds of different things from underwater mines to other enemy divers in deep, dark, murky waters. Beluga whales were actually used because they could dive to much deeper depths than dolphins or sea lions. And sea lions were actually used because they had amazing eyesight and they could also swim to very deep depths very quickly, and they had some flippers that they could somewhat use as hands. Sea lions are actually amphibious as well, so they can go on land to perform missions and get objectives done. Dolphins are much better than any machine at detecting underwater mines. So these dolphins and beluga whales are actually able to attach clips on things or handcuffs on things with weighted lines, so a buoy would rise up to the surface and the scientists would know right where the target was at. They could reel in the target after the dolphin or sea lion attached the clip to it. The dolphin and sea lion could also attach, a homing device next to the object or target. Dolphins and beluga whales, they use what's called echolocation, and this is a very highly tuned sonar that humans cannot match, even with our technology today. The scientists actually tested a dolphin's echolocation, and they took him out in some murky waters and they buried some round pieces of metal, different types of metal, in the mud. Now, scientists used a dolphin named BJ for this experiment, and basically they buried these types of metal. It was brass, steel, and aluminum 2 feet down in the mud, and BJ was easily able to distinguish where the objects were located and what type of metal they were. He was able to distinguish which type of metal was buried under the 2 feet of murky silt. So in 1965, a dolphin named Tuffy began his first mission. Basically, they were building something called Sea Lab 2. It was 200 feet below the surface of the water, and Tuffy would dive down 200 feet deep carrying mail and tools and equipment for the build. So Tuffy would dive down to Sea Lab 2 repeatedly, bringing tools and mail and all kinds of stuff that the Navy personnel would need. If there was a diver headed down to Sea Lab 2 or headed back up to the surface and they got lost or disoriented, Tuffy would actually help guide them to safety back up to surface or back down to Sea Lab 2. Dolphins work great for these types of missions because they have the best memory in the animal kingdom. Dolphins were used in both the Vietnam War and the Persian Gulf conflict to make sure that no enemy divers were putting mines or bombs on their Navy sea vessels. So the dolphins would be used to patrol around the boats or patrol around the harbors for enemy divers. As the dolphin swam around the harbors and around the ships, they would use their sonar or their echolocation to search for enemy divers, and if they noticed one, they would alert the proper authorities, and they potentially would also attach a clip onto the diver so a weighted buoy would come up and potentially the enemy diver could be reeled in or easily located. During the Vietnam War, rumors began to spread that dolphins were being used as weapons of war, and they were being used to kill enemy divers. 5 dolphins were actually sent to Ragnar Bay to patrol the bay and make sure no enemy divers, attached mines to the ship's anchors and things like that. The government denies any program of dolphins killing enemy divers ever existed. There have been actual reports of dolphins going underwater and pulling the diver's face mask off. These reports were basically verified by people that it happened to. The people that were drowned by the dolphins were not available for questioning. Now, there were rumors that countries like Palestine was creating battle dolphins. Basically, they would have knives on their snouts and they would have specially designed face masks that would have bang sticks on there that could blow up, like a long stick that would scare a diver or hurt somebody potentially. They even had reports of an exploding tip wasp knife. So the knife would shoot out and sting like a wasp, and when it hit, it would explode basically like a little missile. All these reports are not officially corroborated, but you could imagine other countries with less restrictions might get a little out of control, if they don't have anybody holding them back. Russia, for example, in 2017 televised several dolphins and different sea animals and sea lions guarding naval bases for them. They're guarding the entrances and the ports and the harbors, basically to catch and to potentially kill any enemy divers. So in Ukraine, once their battle dolphins are retired, they actually take and use them to work with autistic children. So they use them for a positive use once they are completed with their military use. During World War II, there was an apparent training facility for sea lions and dolphins and sea animals near Stockholm, Sweden. This was top secret, and after World War II, the facility was apparently closed down. As I mentioned earlier, sea lions were used because of their amazing eyesight in the water. They're very good at detecting floating mines or mines on the sea floor or enemy swimmers. They're very good at dealing with enemy swimmers because of their flippers and their versatile amphibious nature. So sea lions are amazing creatures. They can dive down 650 feet deep and recover equipment for the Navy. They can be used in all kinds of different rescue operations. The Navy, when a plane would crash and they would be using test dummies, in water, they would have the sea lions dive down and retrieve the test dummies for them so they could be reused. As you can imagine, if they're 500 feet deep, a diver can't easily go down and get it, but a sea lion can. Sea lions have the ability to tow objects, and they can even sabotage enemy equipment on the water or on land. So in 2011, the media in San Diego did a demonstration using a Navy SEAL. They had the Navy SEAL basically pretend he was trying to infiltrate the harbor. He had a pretend mine and he was swimming into the harbor with his pretend mine. And they released a few sea lions and dolphins. And basically they caught the diver right away every single time. So the sea lion actually was able to catch this Navy SEAL and put a clip or handcuffs on him. So a buoy went to the surface and they were actually able to reel in the Navy SEAL like a fish. So sea lions that work with the MK6 team actually carry a set of specialized handcuffs in their mouths that they use and attach to enemy divers that has a tracking or locator device on it. And since they're handcuffs, the other diver can't easily get them off and they can easily be tracked by our Navy. So in 2019, a white whale named Vladimir showed up on the coast of Sweden wearing a harness on his head that looked like it was for a camera. And he was real friendly with humans and he acted like he'd been trained by humans. So they took the camera harness off and they looked at it and they saw that it said property of St. Petersburg inside of there. So because of this behavior and this harness and property of St. Petersburg, many assumed this was a Russian spy whale. I mean, if this was my whale and my headgear, I wouldn't write my name on it. I would probably write, North Korea, or I would write some other country on there. So I think it's up for debate if it's a Russian spy, but it sounds like it was definitely a spy whale. So the United States Navy actually attempted to train 19 different aquatic species in order to use in missions. One of the species they tried to use was a killer whale. And they tried to use a killer whale because its amazing ability to dive deep depths. A killer whale can dive down 3,000 feet deep in very cold water. So even sharks have been used by the U.S. Navy. Sharks were trained for underwater protection, basically like an underwater guard dog. They also had another thing that they tried called Project Headgear, where they basically tried to turn the shark into an actual torpedo. They would equip the shark with bombs and all kinds of different explosives, and they would guide the shark into its target. So the Navy created a remote control shark by attaching shock devices to both sides of the shark's head. So if they wanted it to swim one way, they would shock it on one side, and if they wanted to swim the other, they would shock it on the other side. It was a 5 volt to 25 volt shock that the shark would get in order to steer it. One of the reasons the Navy wanted to use sharks was because they are very good at slipping under the radar, no pun intended. Sharks don't have a swim bladder, so they can't be detected by our modern radar or sonar. And now, because they don't have a swim bladder, if a shark dies, a shark sinks to the bottom of the ocean with all of its evidence that it could potentially be carrying. If a dolphin or another fish dies and it has a swim bladder, it would float to the surface with all of the potential evidence. So it's nice because if a shark died, it would go to the bottom, all the evidence is disposed of. A shark also doesn't use sonar or echolocation like a dolphin or a whale. A shark uses eyes. So a dolphin, as you know, would be doing the clicking noises to use its sonar, click, click, click all the time in the water, and potentially notify enemy divers, where a shark is very silent. So the sharks did well with training, but overall they would only go about 3/4 of a nautical mile. So they didn't go as far as the Navy would have liked in order to complete the missions. Basically, the program with the sharks ended in 1971. In 1986, the Navy sent a dolphin named Skippy to the Persian Gulf to help protect oil tankers in the murky waters and also protect Navy divers on their missions. So Skippy had about 5 friends with him, and their job was to protect the U.S. ships in the dangerous waters, and Skippy actually ended up getting an infection and dying. This event really riled up animal activists, and basically they ended up taking the Navy to court, and over time they ended up winning due to the Environmental Protection Act. One of the reasons the judge sided with the environmental activists was Skippy was used to being in warm waters, and the Persian Gulf was about 20 degrees colder than he was used to. So basically the judge ordered the Navy to produce a study showing that the things that they're doing with the dolphins are okay and beneficial for the dolphins. The Navy did not produce a study and give it to the court. However, they stopped allowing the dolphins to go in water that's much colder than they're accustomed to. The 80s was really the heyday for this program. The government had an $8 million budget, and they had over 100 dolphins and several beluga whales and sea lions. So by the 90s, the Cold War was over, and the need for all of the sea lions and dolphins and beluga whales was really diminishing. So they downsized the program, and they're really struggling to find a place for all of the combat dolphins. The Navy was struggling with the idea of setting them free in the wild or having them go into the zoo in captivity. They were actually struggling at finding zoos that would take the dolphins, I assume because of their tattoos and bad attitudes. So in the 90s, the Navy reduced their numbers from over 100 down to 70. Dolphins and marine animals are still used in other countries in many different ways to assist in naval or military operations. The U.S. still uses them today as well, just in somewhat of a reduced capacity. Fun fact, did you know a penguin named Nils Olav III is 3rd in rank in the Norwegian King's Guard? He's the mascot and colonel-in-chief, and he was knighted in 2008 by the king. He's the 3rd penguin since 1972 to hold this rank, and his title is Major Sir Nils Olav III, Baron of Bouvet Islands. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I hope you learned something today. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel a lot, and we will have a ton more content similar to this to come. Thank you very much.